In werewolf society, female werewolves face immense social pressure if they haven't found a mate by the age of 25. Mary, a shy and often overlooked girl, is attending the mating ball for the 5th time this year. This time, she decides to stop waiting passively and take the initiative. She musters up the courage to follow a mysterious male werewolf, only to discover that he is the heist out of a werewolf, Ryker. And Ryker, this ruthless wolf leader, also shows a momentary wavering under Mary's sudden assault. Can this ordinary girl's bold move break the rules of werewolf society and win the heart of this wolf king? Join us in exploring this story filled with fantasy and romance. Tonight would either transform Mary's destiny or crush her hopes entirely. For 5 long years, the shy and anxious young woman had attended the mating ball, her determined spirit pushing her to persevere despite her growing unease. Each year, she found herself relegated to the sidelines, a silent observer as others discovered their fated partners and embarked on new lives together. This evening, her heart raced with anticipation, lodged firmly in her throat as she steeled herself for what she was about to do. In werewolf society, it was customary to marry soon after turning 18, certainly before reaching 25. The mating process forged an unbreakable lifelong bond between couples. At 25, Mary's persistent nature was being tested as she hadn't yet caught the eye of any male werewolf, and she could feel her chances slipping away with each passing moment. Knowing this might be her last opportunity, Mary was grateful for the support of her sister-in-law, Daniela. The skilled seamstress had devoted countless hours to crafting Mary's exquisite balgan, a masterpiece of light pink and subtle blue floral lace applique with delicate capped sleeves that gracefully swept the polished golden floor of the grand ballroom. "I can do this," Mary whispered to herself, summoning her courage as she spotted the mysterious male who had captured her interest slipping discreetly through a set of heavy golden double doors. She navigated through the crowd of elegantly dressed attendees, their wondrous tuxedos and ball gowns a blur as she focused on her goal. The arched ceiling above sparkled beneath magnificent chandeliers, and soft music filled the air. Mary quickened her pace, gathering the ends of her gown to avoid tripping as she made her way across the room. Slipping through the same door, Mary found herself in a dark corridor. She blinked, allowing her eyes to adjust to the dimness before proceeding down the hallway. The soft swish of her gown against the floor was the only sound as the door closed behind her with a gentle click. Following the man's unique scent, an alluring mixture of cardamom and cloves with a hint of sweetness, Mary's determination grew stronger. She couldn't discern whether it was his cologne or his natural scent, but it drew her forward, leading her to another dark room at the end of the corridor. With trembling fingers, Mary slowly turned the golden doorknob, her heart pounding as she opened the door just a crack to peer inside, hoping this moment would be the turning point in her search for a mate. "Hello," she whispered. No one answered her. Strange. His scent was the strongest in this room. He must be here. She opened the door further and stepped inside completely. Again, the door closed softly behind her with a click. She moved into the middle of the room, Mr. Stonewall. She realized she shouldn't have called him that. Her pursuit was not a Mr. only. He was a male with great prestige. He was the beta of the Stonewall pack. She had to address him by his title. Just as she was about to do that, she saw movement out by the terrace. "Are you there?" she asked and entered onto the terrace where he was hiding. The moon illuminated the night sky, and she felt like she had somehow invaded his privacy. He had moved to this empty room for that reason, but she needed to do this. She needed to captivate this male or she would never find a happily ever after. Without glancing at his face, she closed her eyes, grabbed his cheeks and stood on her tiptoes before slamming her lips onto his. The kiss was less than eloquent. Her teeth had knocked into his. It was painful, and she grimaced. But she was a determined female. He stood before her, rigid with surprise and anger. Of course, he would be mad at her. She had practically knocked teeth with him, but she would not go down without a fight. She slanted her lips over his and instantly found how soft his lips were. They were nice and pillow-y, not chapped at all. which she found pleasing. Suddenly, Mary wanted to taste him. She parted her lips gently and slowly tugged on his bottom lip, urging him to let suck on it. When he refused to comply, she caressed his cheeks gently as an act of an apology for kissing him abruptly. To her utter surprise and delight, he offered her his lips, but that was all he did. He refused to move from his spot. His body was still stiff with tension, but oh, this man smelled wonderful. She felt like drowning in it. She tugged on his bottom lip, and when she tasted him, she sighed in happiness. Her heart fluttered at the taste of champagne on his lips and stomach was gnawing strangely. She had but a few guys she had slept with, but none of them were special. Yet a simple taste of this male and she found her knees were weak. She leaned further into his body. One hand slid to the back of her neck to deepen the kiss, her tongue sweeping in, tasting how warm and sweet he was. When it touched his tongue, he kissed her back. Finally, she had thought this was all for nothing, but he proved her wrong. He wrapped one arm around her waist, the other went into her hair. He was a rascal for threading his fingers through her hair. She'd had taken forever to pin it up with beautiful flower pins. That was the last thought though for Mary because the male crushed her body into his. A little taken aback by his strength, she stopped kissing him for a minute. The heat stirred between her legs. His tongue swept inside and tangled with hers. It was erotic. It left Mary breathless. She felt like she was being kissed because she was the best source of sweetness for him. She felt like she was being devoured and teased at the same time. Her hairpins hit the terrace floor. She can feel her hair become loose as he repeatedly slanted his lips over hers. Mary tried focusing on how his body feels against hers and noticed how much taller and broader his shoulders were. She could have sworn he was this tall. But it may be because she was standing across the ballroom. She may have underestimated his size. Slowly, she combed her hands up through his hair. It was a strange haircut, one with a medium, length taper fade cut. She imagined him to look like a total badass with that hairstyle, especially with the stubble beard that she felt against her skin. Her thoughts were interrupted though when she felt his hand slid lower and cupped her bottom. The gall on this man. She was so surprised she stopped returning his kisses until he growled deep in his throat to remind her and slapped her bottom. She let out a squeal of vexation and disbelief, but was interrupted when he pulled his lips away and descended his lips down her jawline and to her neck. The feel of his mouth and his beard against her skin was amazing. She couldn't speak. She could only feel. Brazen female sneaking off into a dark room to be ravished. He growled huskily. She gulped before responding. I saw you slip away. I wanted to find you. That was half the truth. She wanted to snag this male and make him hers completely. He was continually sucking on a spot on her neck that was driving her insane. Mary clutched at the lapels of his tuxedo to keep herself from falling. Her body molded against his. So you wanted to seduce me? He whispered. His voice was surprisingly calm and even filled with somewhat humor, but there was a gravelly smoothness to his vocals that had Mary's skin litter with goosebumps. No, she responded in a breathless whisper. Mary didn't want to seduce him. Did she? She had only wanted to kiss him, to drive him mad with need. But he was partially correct. She was trying to seduce him. She pulled back and looked at the man above her. He wasn't happy she had pulled away, but conceded anyway to her silent request to stop. But the darkness of the night and only the moonlight as support. She could only make out his features. She remembered the obsidian black hair and hazel eyes. It was the first thing that captured her attention. It was one reason she had inquired with her wallflower companions earlier this evening about him. He looked down at her at first with observant eyes, equally taking in her features as much as she was. His eyes were steely but shadowed. It was hard to read what he thought of her. Unable to hold his penetrating gaze further, she looked down at his chin. He was growing a 3 days' growth of beard. She can see hints of it. In his arms. She felt small even when she stood at least 59. What is your name? He asked suddenly. Mary. She replied. Mary Elizabeth Carter. She waited for him to also give him her name. But it seemed he was going to. It also seemed like he would not release her soon too. Why are you here? He questioned further. She didn't want to tell him she came after him to kiss him senseless, although their kiss was more than senseless. It was mind-numbing and knee-weakening sensual. She loved every bit. No male had ever kissed her that or made her feel that way. She murmured, but found it even stranger that he had left the ballroom. She redirected the question back to him. A flash of irritation crossed his face. She realized he didn't like it very much, but she had not answered his question. He admitted it and released her. She was glad for space, took a few steps back before crouching down to hunt for her pins. If anyone had found her pins out here, she would be in big trouble here. The ballroom is the grandest ballroom I have ever seen in my life. Why, it could fit over another 100 people. She replied and picked up one that was glistening in the moon. It was the air in the ballroom that caused me to step away. It was the people in the room. He grumbled. Mary thought back to watching him in the ballroom. Abraham did meet a lot of females. He talked amongst a lot of peers, but he didn't seem at all fazed with the crowd. She picked the last of her pins before standing up to face him. You don't enjoy casual conversations amongst your peers? She questioned. He eyed her like she was the craziest thing ever, as if she didn't have a clue what she was talking about. She found his bewildered look vexing and wanted to prod further. Not that. He moved to stand back on the terrace. His hands were on the rail. Mary tried to fix her hair to the best she could. It was about time she headed back to the ballroom or elderly companion from her pack would start hunting her down. The pack's reputation was important. If words get out that a female pack member has done something as scandalous as this, her brother would be horrified and demand retribution. Just as that thought passed through her mind, she heard voices from outside the room. Someone was walking down the hallway. In a hurry, she grabbed the male's arm to get his attention. I know this is inconvenient and I am sorry that I had come out here and kissed you like this, but I think you are handsome and that kiss, it was nothing like I have ever felt before. I realize that we may never meet again, but I hope that I get to see you again, she rushed to say in a panic. Confusion flooded his features, and she felt another rush of anxiety hits her. She didn't have time to explain. There was no time for confusion. She grabbed his cheeks again and slammed her lips onto his again, kissing him with all that she got, leaving no desires, no secrets behind. In the kiss, she hoped he could see that she wanted more with him and that the kiss was just a mere kiss but something more between them. A knock sounded at the door. She broke the kiss, glanced at the door, and then back at his confused face. Wait. He grabbed onto her wrist, but she was quick. She evaded his grasps and ran for the side connecting door. She opened it just as the door she came through earlier opened and slipped away. She heard male voices conversing just as she exited the adjacent room and back into the ballroom too. After the mating ball, Ryker was determined to return to his pack and then go on with his life. Yet it's been days, and he has been able to have a single good night rest. As a matter of fact, he has been dreaming about her. Mary Elizabeth Carter, a paragon of sensuality but a complete disturbance to Ryker's state of mind. God damn. Ryker didn't want to like anything about her, but he did. The female was bold, shameless to had approached him. He should be used to it by now. Females constantly throw themselves at him because of his ranking status, his wallet size, and the amount of power he holds. They didn't care if he was a psychopath, sociopath, or some kind of fucked up narcissistic asshole. They didn't care because he wasn't born into his rank but fought his way to his position. He learned his lesson when he fell in love years ago to a female he thought loved him, but got his heart broken. He swore to himself that never again would he allow himself to feel those feelings. Yet when he felt the warm press of a feminine body pressed against his, all he could do was think about driving himself deep inside of her. He could argue that it had been 2 years since he had experienced a soft-willing and curvy body pressed against his, but it was just that. There was something about her that kept him furious but desiring. His eyes wandered back to the picture of Mary staring back at him. Log into the classification as a low-ranking female wolf. She has no achievements within or outside of her pack. Her parents have passed away, but she has one brother who was an enforcer for the Solomon pack. His eyes swept past her date of birth. Newly turned 20, 5 years old and unmated. The total of 7 years difference between them. He knew she was seeking him for a mating prospect. He couldn't think of why else she would step inside a dark room and kiss a stranger. But why did she run away when she heard someone come into the room? Didn't she want to get caught? Unable to think any further and angry that she was entering his thoughts even while awake, he slammed the laptop closed. Abraham looked up from the file he was reading, unfazed with his brother's antics. "Are the statements showing fraudulent charges?" he asked. Ryker stood up from his seat and walked over to his office window. He took in the evergreen forests and mountains before him. They lived far from the city but still have a brawny hand in the investment and industry in the city. It was their main financial resource. They used what investments to maintain their land. Once in a while, Ryker or Abraham would step out of the territory to resolve investment issues or establish new investments. The rest of the pack members either work for Ryker or own their own kind of income. It generated a good economic cycle within the pack. As their leader, he could help those supported by the pack on internal and external matters. Or could it be the female scent I smelled when I found you in that dark room during the mating ball? Abraham prodded further. Ryker turned to glare at his brother. The two brothers were 3 years apart. Yet the two have a similar resemblance that if apart, no one could tell the difference between the two. "Your nose is off. Might want to get that checked," Ryker replied, moving back to sit in his seat. He picked up the file and stared blindly at the numbers he was reading. Irritation was rolling off of him in waves, but he refused to acknowledge it. "My nose can smell a female scent perfectly," he smirked, setting down his own folder on Ryker's desk. Abraham leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms over his chest to eye Ryker's mysterious shift in mood with a silent observation. Between the two brothers, Ryker was one who did not trust easily with females. "It's nothing," Ryker muttered. Abraham didn't look like he believed Ryker one bit. He knew that his brother wasn't alone in the room. When he had told his brother to meet him outside the room to talk about Samuel, he had heard the soft click of an adjoining door. "You know that the mating ball is a hunting ground for females. Did you really think that by escaping to a dark room would be safe for you?" Abraham chided Ryker jokingly. Ryker replied, still glowering at Abraham. Abraham gave in a little to his brother. Standing up from his chair, he walked around Ryker's desk to stand next to him. He lifted the laptop screen. It flickered back on and his eyes scanned the file that Ryker was reviewing. "She doesn't look that bad." Abraham looked Mary's picture over. "But then she isn't what I would exactly call beautiful." Ryker couldn't understand why Abraham's words irritated him. His eyes snapped to his brother, who took a cautious step back. He chuckled before making his way back around the desk to sit in his chair again. "She is from Ivan Solomon's pack." "Solomon, isn't he the one that recently asked for a mating alliance between his little sister and you?" Abraham inquired with renewed interest. Ryker nodded in response. It was true. Ivan approached him at the mating ball regarding a mating prospect between his sister and him. In Ryker's opinion, he knew why Ivan was seeking for an alliance. Over the years, the Stonewall Pack has flourished in wealth and land. Their pack's eyes was slowly growing. "His sister is pretty," Abraham added, looking at him expectantly. Ryker recalled glimpsing her at the mating ball. Indeed, she was pretty. Many males had asked her to dance, but the female was barely 20. She was too young for Ryker, and Ryker nearly growled his reply. "And you told him no," Abraham said with a heavy sigh, leaning back in his seat. He crossed his arms over his chest. "You are turning 33 soon. Brother, I think it is about time you find yourself a mate. I think visiting the Solomon Pack would be an impressive start in looking for one. If I don't have an heir, I still have you to take over the pack." Abraham snorted because they both knew he wanted nothing to do with the Alpha title. He will accept the Beta title, but the Alpha title involved him many responsibilities. Ryker looked at the picture on his laptop screen once more, contemplating the many reasons he shouldn't go to the Solomon Pack, but realizing quickly that he wouldn't mind seeing Mary again. Would she own up to what she did? He wanted to see her reaction. With that in mind, he nodded his head in agreement. I think you're right, Abe. We should visit the Solomon Pack. Start looking at mating prospects, or at the very least see what resources that the Solomon Pack has to offer to establish an alliance. Ryker completed. Exactly 3 days later, after agreeing to Ivan's invitation, Ryker and Abraham left their packed territory with a few enforcers. They arrived in Solomon's territory in half a day, running in their wolf form. The Solomon's territory was mostly a flat, planed territory. There were hills, but no mountains. They had pleasant valley and rivers and harvesting locations. It didn't look at all that bad. As packs that live in a more secluded area, the air around the area was a lot more clean. There was a crispness to it that Ryker found comforting. City packs are more highly advanced. They work amongst humans and are highly innovative with their technology, learning to drive rather than run. Ivan greeted them at the border before directing them to his home. Sitting in Ivan's office was inside Solomon's mansion. Ivan's facial expression revealed how happy he was that Ryker had accepted his invitation. I'm glad you accepted my invitation. You wouldn't believe how happy my sister was when she heard you would be here. Ivan grinned. Somehow Ryker found that hard to believe because, at the mating ball, Ivan's sister did not look at him with any interest. With the number of years between them, it would be hard for her to find interest. But it was because Ryker was a solid male himself. Ryker was still young and robust, but with a young female wolf like Lily, they had no similar interest in anything. To be honest, I am not here because of your sister, Ivan, Ryker replied. What? I thought. His voice dropped with confusion. You thought your young sister, and I had a connection at the mating ball. Quite the opposite. Don't get me wrong. She's a pretty female wolf, but she is too young, Ivan, Ryker told him. Ivan looked flustered, his face turning red with embarrassment. The young alpha was about Abraham's age. Abraham chuckled to release the tension. You don't have to feel embarrassed, Ivan. Ryker would still like to look into an alliance with you. We are just here to observe your territory management and pack resources, Abraham assured him. Ivan breathed a sigh of relief, almost afraid that he would lose the secured alliance between them. Nodding his head, he waved his hand in front of them. I am glad to hear. I would be happy to show you around my pack. He added, actually, if you don't mind, I would like to meet your pack members first. Ryker pushed further with a hidden ulterior motive. My pack members. I've unquestioned not catching on to Ryker's request. Some of my enforcers that came with me today are not yet mated, my brother included. It would be nice to create a relationship amongst our pack members. Ryker lied smoothly. Oh, that's right. Splendid idea. Actually, Ivan chuckled. I'll have my bae to send out notices to everyone to meet and greet you this afternoon. Ryker wanted to push further. The afternoon was hours away. If he was to have it his way, he would demand them to show their presence now. Honestly, he wasn't interested in anybody else. He was more interested in Mary. While Ivan prattled on about pack matters, Ryker wondered if Mary would be in the group of people who would be here to greet him. Sitting down for breakfast with her older brother a few days after the mating ball was no coincidence. Mary knew exactly why her brother had invited her for the bunch. He wanted to talk about the mating ball and potential mating prospect. At 25, Mary was independent. She has a working income and lives on her own without her brother's overprotectiveness shadowing her every move. He fell into the metal chair before her. Breakfast platters of sausage links, scrambled eggs, pancakes, and bacon sat in front of them. Danielle always cooks up a big feast, even if it was only for their tiny little family. Where are the kids? How are they doing? Mary asked, even though she had just seen them a few days ago. Jonathan had just discovered his newest adventure in the pantry the other day. Climbed the shelves for cookies and ended up spilling everything over. As for Joey, he has found how to run freely without diapers. I have discovered several wet spots all around the house. He grumbled and ran a hand through his short, textured haircut in frustration. Mary simpered at the image of her nephews running wild. She couldn't help but feel mildly pleased that her brother was suffering from parenthood. I should stop by to visit sometimes. Maybe I'll babysit the boys while you two go on a date, she offered. His smile brightened, and Mary saw once again how handsome her brother was. He had all the good genes. The dimples on his cheeks added to his whole look. It was one reason he was so highly popular with the female wolves. Daniela would be extremely happy. I know with the little one on the way. She really needs a break, but you know her. She won't ask for it even if the world was ending, he said. Daniela was pregnant with their third child and well on her way to giving birth soon, which explains many times she had on her hands to complete my bargain for Mary. She didn't want to go to the mating ball this year, but was coerced by Marcus. Even so, she loved them with all her heart. Suddenly, Marcus's cell phone rang. He picked it up and muttered a few yes before hanging up. It was a quick call, and so Mary assumed they needed him back at work. It seems we have visitors and our presence is required, Marcus announced. Okay, I'll leave you to it then, Mary replied, standing up from her chair, an unfinished plate of food. Hold on a minute. Marcus stopped her with a hand in front of him. She frowned in confusion at her brother, connecting the dots in her head and then responding, I am required to go too. He smiled then before nodding his head. Yes, Mary Elizabeth Carter. You are to report to the Alpha's home immediately. You're joking. Right, she replied. Do I look like I am joking? He deadpanned her. She groaned. But I had other things to do today. Oh, you mean to sit at home and watch TV? He shot back. I live on my own. Marcus, you can't scold me like I am still a minor in your home, she retorted. He sighed. It is an order from our Alpha. We should obey. Mary huffed once more before nodding her head at her brother. She'll listen this time and go, but don't think she would change her comfortable track pants and a plain shirt for anyone. Besides, no one would even notice. All right. Would Daniela and the boys be going to? She asked. Daniela is carrying a lot of weight. I think it would be best if she rests as much as possible. Too much standing would make her feet swollen, and then she wouldn't comfortable all night, Marcus replied. That was understandable to Mary. If she was pregnant, she wouldn't want to step out of the house at all too. Being a couch potato was what she does best. She eyed her brother from underneath her eyelashes while she picked up her keys and wallet from the table. So maybe you should go first and I'll meet you there, she lied. Marcus knew exactly what's up. He shook his head and gestured for the front door. You're going with me, he ordered. But what about my car? What about it? Who is going to drive it? You'll come back with me after the meeting, he said, knowing he had her there. She made a face at him before following him out the door of their home. The drive to the Alpha's home wasn't too far. It was about a 15-minute drive down some minor dirt roads that led around a small town. Honestly, they could have walked or run in their wolves. But Marcus said he promised to swing by the town to buy Daniela some sweet treats. They approached the fancy, low-level iron gate that led to the Alpha's home. The guards at the gate opened the gates once they saw them. The black asphalt driveway curved in a semi-circle before it rounded into a rounded parking space. Parking their cars amongst a few others, they stepped out of Marcus's truck. Many people were already here. There were many looks of confusion, but as they went around to the back of the Alpha's house where the meeting was, the look of confusion from before transformed into a look of excitement. Pack members whispered anxiously with curious eyes while we waited. Mary tried to listen to the conversations that were going on around her. So many pack members attended, but she noticed an increase in young female pack members. Brushing it off, she leaned toward Marcus. Did they tell you who visited our pack? She whispered. No, Beta Curtis only mentioned that it was important that most members attend the meeting. He leaned to whisper air. As more pack members arrived, she was somehow pushed to the back with Marcus. Soon, she couldn't even see the back porch, growling in frustration. She nudged Marcus. I'm going to climb the tree. She pointed to the tree beside them. No, he reprimanded her. But I can't see, she muttered. Marcus grabbed onto her arm, and they moved to the left. They were still in the back, but she could see the back porch now. Better? He asked, looking down at her. She nodded with a grin before turning her attention to the back porch. Female gasps resounded throughout the crowd as Alpha Ivan stepped out with a group of males. Mary's eyes lazily scanned the giants until it swept across one in particular. She stopped, backpedaled until her eyes landed on him again. No. Her eyes jumped between two of the males that looked very similar. One of them was for sure Beta Abraham. They look very similar in features, but Beta Abraham was the shorter one, which only means that Alpha Ryker was the tall man standing next to him. Oh God. Now that they were standing next to each other, she could tell the difference. Horror flooded her. Dear Lord, she thought to herself. Her feet stumbled back a few steps. Alpha Ivan was speaking, but she could barely hear a word. There was a loud ringing in her ears. They thumped against her eardrums, and she was sure all blood had disappeared from her face. She didn't kiss Beta Abraham. She had kissed Alpha Ryker. She made a loud noise of distraught, causing a few people to turn her way, her brother included. Marcus looked down at her and noticed how ashen her face was. She looked like she was about to faint right in front of him. Grabbing onto her arms, he steadied her on her feet. She was practically swaying in front of him. Mary, are you all right? He whispered in concern. Oh, dear Lord. Jesus. I can't believe this. Oh God. She muttered incoherently. Mary. Marcus whispered again, shaking her hard to get some sense into her. Her eyes flew from Marcus S. to the back porch. She found Alpha Ryker looking right at her. At that moment, she wanted to sink into the ground, but then a small part of her had hoped that he wouldn't recognize her. It was dark that night when she kissed him. He couldn't possibly have seen her, yet even when she thought about it, she knew he knew who she was. She had given him her name. What was I thinking? She breathed in horror. You better tell me what the hell is going on. Mary. Her brother growled impatiently, worried about her state of mind. She grabbed onto Marcus's arms. Marcus, I did something terrible. Oh God. I think I might be in trouble. I think the Alpha is here because he wants to punish me. What? Marcus marked confused. She looked around and noticed a few eyes were still looking their way. She grabbed onto his arm and dragged him away from the group. When they were alone and far from the group, she stopped to look at her older brother. Oh God. Marcus. I kissed him, she exclaimed. What? He shouted back. Didn't hear me. I kissed the Alpha. She cried and began pacing. I don't understand. Did you kiss him? When was this? Mary, you're not making any sense. Tell me what happened from the beginning. He sputtered quickly. You told me to seize the moment. You told me that this would be my year. That I should not wait for love to come to me. That I should chase it. Oh God. Marcus. I had thought I kissed the Beta, but I ended up kissing the Alpha. I made a horrible mistake, she replied. At the mating ball, her brother said dumbly. Weren't you listening to me? She cried out again and covered her face with her hands. Her brother wrapped his hands around her wrists and pulled them apart. It's okay. I'm sure he is here by coincidence. I'm sure he doesn't even know who you are. I told him my name, she replied bluntly. Why would you do that? He growled. Because I thought I was kissing the Beta. She cried once again. Her brother began pacing in front of her, shoving his hands through his hair as he thought about a plan. Marcus was now as agitated as she was. Don't worry about it. I'm sure we would be fine. He muttered once again. You don't sound convincing, she said. Well, do you like him? He stopped to look at her. Him the Beta. She answered in confusion. No, Mary. I mean the Alpha. She thought back to the kiss they had that night. She didn't realize it was Alpha Ryker, but she did like the kiss a lot. She loved it. Mary wanted more of it. She even dreamt about it, but in her dreams. The night dark in his facial features. similar to the night a mating ball. She didn't dream of the beta then, just the male she kissed that night. Oddly, her insides coiled at remembering how it felt to be in his arms. "Mary?" Marcus questioned. She looked at him. "I didn't know it was him." She looked so distraught and upset that Marcus cowled and found it in to upset her even more. So all he could do was bring her into a hug and tell her it would all be okay. When they returned to the meeting, everyone was lining up to greet the 6 towering giants. Her eyes snapped to Marcus. "I don't think. You must face him one day," Marcus said as they stood in the line waiting to meet them. "Besides, he might not even recognize you. Or I can avoid him until he leaves." She counted and allowed a few pack members to go in front of her. "Mary, Carters do not run. We face tragedy and dive right into the fight," he scolded. She scoffed at him. Marcus has always used that saying on her. It was one that their father used to tell them. After they passed away, Marcus continued it. She watched Alpha Ryker shake every Ona's hands. Many females tried to get his attention, but he seemed oblivious to them all. Once in a while, he would exchange conversation with a few people. She snuck a couple of glances his way and realized quickly that although Beta Abraham and he had similar eyes and hair colors and facial structure, they too looked different. Beta Abraham's eyes were a lot softer while Alpha Ryker looked downright serious, while Beta Abraham's hair was not long. It was more of a crew-cut hairstyle while Alpha Ryker's hair was a taper faded haircut. Beta Abraham didn't have a stubble beard too. She could die from her stupidity as she observed the 2 brothers further. After allowing many pack members to surpass her, she was the last one. Marcus had to literally drag her onto the steps and onto the porch. Alpha Ryker's and Beta Abraham's eyes were on her, watching, waiting, observing. She was melting into a puddle. Her legs refused to move. "Mary," Marcus growled into her ear. Slowly, she began moving until she stood in front of them. She shook Beta Abraham's hands first. "Good afternoon, Beta," she greeted. "My name is Mary. It is a pleasure to meet you." "Mary," Beta Abraham replied with a soft, assuring smile. She felt relaxed. Everything would be okay. Then she moved to stand in front of Alpha Ryker and she felt her backbone shriveling away. She kept her eyes pinned on his stubble chin while she spoke. "Good afternoon, Alpha," she greeted him next, moving to shake his hands. His large calloused hands slipped into her soft feminine ones. He shook her hand and squeezed. She fought back a grimace, knowing he wanted her to look at him. When she cowled and take it any further, her eyes snapped up to glare at him. She began tugging her hand away, but he held onto it. "Good afternoon, Mary," he replied smoothly. She remembered that voice and renewed shivers sizzled down her spine and between her legs. Damn it all, she literally screamed in her head. He released her hand, and she quickly placed it back at her side. Mary glanced at Marcus, who shook Alpha Ryker's hand and greeted him with his title and name. She noticed that Alpha Ryker's stiffened body relaxed a little upon hearing Marcus greet himself as Mary's brother. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously at Alpha Ryker, wondering what he wanted in coming here. They descended the steps and blended into the crowd. Alpha Ivan spoke up again. "The Stonewall Pack would stay with us for a few days. As they are our guests, I hope that you all treat them with kindness and show them around our territory if requested. Tonight, in honor of their arrival, I would throw a pack feast. Please bring your family and join me at my home," he announced, but everyone knew he meant they should all attend the feast. Mary's eyes found their way back to Alpha Ryker. To her utter surprise, he was already looking in her direction. The intensity in his eyes was nerve-wracking. Slowly, everyone began moving around. Most of them were going to wait and socialize until the feast. Marcus turned to her. "I'm sorry, Mary. Daniela wanted the sweet cake in the bakery in town. I am going to have to go. I'll go with you," she chimed in. He shook his head. "One of us has to stay behind," meaning there were no other family members except them. She was going to have to stay behind and entertain. She gave him a desperate look. Marcus, she literally gritted. I'm sorry, he replied with a sympathetic look. You know, earlier today, when I told you I would babysit, you can forget it. She growled before turning on her feet and walking away from her brother. Her brother knew she threw an empty threat in his face. She would babysit in a heartbeat, but she wanted to say it just to make herself feel better. Mary's picture in the classification system did not reveal the hints of precious freckles on her cheeks and over the bridge of her nose. Seeing her up close in broad daylight was different from seeing her under the moonlight. Those soft lips that he had painstakingly sought and conquered were slight, even with a soft tremble to her fuller bottom lip. Then there were those golden, brown eyes that paired so well with the mousy brown hair that fell to the middle of her bottom. Nothing about her popped out as attractive, yet Ryker found his focus was solely on her throughout the meeting. Honestly, she didn't look ghastly. Not quite the opposite. She had a shapely body, one with the right amount of curves, perfectly sized breasts, and hips. She hid them underneath the shirt and track pants today, something different from what she wore at the mating ball. When he looked at her, he could only describe her as a natural plain Jane, for she was neither beautiful nor unpleasant. She was the female that Ryker would have gone for. Ryker was in the middle of watching her talk to her brother from a distance after their meeting. Then he caught an exchange between them that swiftly cast a look of outrage on her face. Abruptly, Abraham appeared next to him, diverting his attention to his brother. Ryker looked at Abraham's amused expression. His brother caught him staring again. She recognized you, Abraham mentioned, with a nod in her direction. She recognized Ryker, but she also looked thoroughly surprised. But he felt it wasn't entirely because of his sudden appearance. It was something else. He didn't really understand. The party picked up pretty quickly, and females pulled away Ryker like vultures. They all fluttered their eyelashes, baited him with enigmatic seductive sways of their body, and light conversation about their life and mating expectations. Honestly, he felt like he had somehow signed himself up for speed dating. The sun began settling over the horizon in orange. Red, purplish hue colored the sky. They now hung festive lights from tree branch to tree branch. Soft music played in the background. They brought drinks and appetizers out for everyone to enjoy. When Ryker finally pulled away from his most recent pursuer, he searched for his brother and the rest of his pack members. He walked away from the back porch and down the steps toward the large group of members who were enjoying the party. When he couldn't find them, he headed around to the front. Maybe they walked away from the party for a breather. He was sure, but knew it could be the reason for their sudden disappearance. He heeled to the shadows of the night, hiding from unwanted attention. His black suit blended in completely with the shadows. His eyes were not really paying attention to his surroundings. He thought he was alone, but was surprised when he heard a female voice cursing underneath her breath. His gaze lifted from the ground to look toward the offender who had evaded his privacy and stopped him from attempting to escape the crowds and perfume. He found Mary muttering curses while staring at the ground. She was walking his directions, straining his ear. He prayed to catch a word of what she was saying. "Damn you, Marcus. You left me with no car," she growled angrily. He caught a shiny glint just as she turned her head. She was speaking into a phone. There was a moment of silence before she spoke up again. "You made me come here. I left my car at your house and now I have to run back home. I'm so mad at you I could very well strangle you." Her frustration amused Ryker. It was refreshing to see someone like her. She threaded her hands through her silky hair and lifted it away from her face, revealing pale skin and proud, glistening eyes. Her brother must have made a snarky remark back because her eyes flashed with fury. "No, he's not here. No, I would not talk to him. No, Marcus. He is busy talking to all the females in the pack." She gritted through her teeth and then threw up her hand, releasing her hair back to frame her face. "I don't care. Marcus. He need not know. Oh Lord, don't give me that talk. No, I'm going to hang up right now." Ryker thought she was going to do just that, but she stopped talking. But her attention was still pointed to her phone. He heard her brother talking distantly in the background. Suddenly, Mary dispelled a heavy sigh. Her shoulders sagged in defeat. Her angry eyes softened a little. It's already embarrassing enough. Marcus. I didn't mean to kiss him. She grumbled like a child admitting that they did something wrong. What do you want me to say to him? No, I would not approach him. I'm going to avoid him. Her brother said something to her that transformed her anger into one of pensiveness, but she made no quick comment. She moved to lean against the side of Ivan's house, her back pressed against the wall. Again, she threaded her hair through her long mousy brown hair, but she didn't complete the action all the way through. She stopped halfway with her hands still in her hair. Her eyes never lifted from the ground too. If she but looked up, she would stare right at him. Ryker wondered why she hasn't noticed yet regarding his presence. It could be because of her occupied mind or the fact that he was holding his breath and control his heartbeat. He didn't want to reveal his presence yet. His scent masked expertly to not reveal his location. There are so many females here. Marcus. They are all either very talented or exquisite. She grated before letting her hand fall back down to her side. Her long hair fell to frame her face. Ryker yearned to run his nose through her hair or see if it felt as silky as it looked. Her brother said something to her. Marcus, please. I have suffered enough humiliation to last me a lifetime. I don't like to compete. Nor do I feel like I should, she murmured. Instantly, she had won Ryker's respect, if not his trust. Her pride and dignity were thicker than some people he met here, men included. People always seemed to expect something from him. Someone of his position with such flexibility should fortify relationships or something. Yet Ryker knew that most people's mindset was selfishly self-preserving. He didn't get here by birth. Ryker was a male wolf who succeeded to his rank by salvaging through hard sweat and sacrifice. In the werewolf society, although he has succeeded to a high rank, he was still not good enough. He was only good for all the goods and resources he could bring. Trusting people was hard for Ryker at all. You know what? It doesn't matter. I don't know why you and I are arguing about this. I'm coming home, she completed before pushing off the wall. Her eyes lifted from the ground. Their eyes clashed, and Ryker watched a look of surprise cross her face. She didn't expect to see him there, much less him eavesdropping. He cowled and hid it now that she caught him. Stepping out from the shadow, his eyes swept their surrounding to find them alone. Although they can still hear the music and the lively party coming from the back of the house, neither of them wanted to speak first. The questions quarreled between them like a loud, intuitive battle. Ryker respected her before but was impressed the next second she continued to stare at him. She didn't shy away now as she did before. He took a step closer. If he reached, he could grab onto her. He studied her now, with no interruptions. At the mating ball, he mostly felt, but now he could pin every curve to every feeling. A strong desire to kiss her throbbed through him, and he reached for her, touching her jawline, tracing it to the back of her neck, and pulled her closer. Are you afraid? He asked, his voice dropping an octave. Yes, she breathed in a bare whisper. Her voice shook with frightened uncertainty. His eyes slid back to her wide golden ones. Her phone slipped from her hand and thumped onto the grassy ground. Good, he growled, but it wasn't an angry growl. It was throaty, raspy with wild desires. She had started their first kiss. It was innocent and damn refreshing. Ryker remembered particularly well how she tasted. Fresh spring water from the mountain spring. The sweetest water one can drink. It was resonating and addicting. He tugged with his hand and she stumbled into his body. Her hands pressed up onto the lapels of his suit, but it burned holes through all fabric and touched his very skin. He felt it to his soul, thrusting his tongue inside. He invaded her mouth like it was home. She got past her initial shock and kissed him back. He moaned softly. The sound was pleading, but it quickly changed. With a growl, one arm wrapped around her waist and lifted her body against him. Taking a careful step back, he pushed her up against the wall. She was trapped between him and the wall, yet she wasn't afraid. He was overwhelming her with his presence. caging and towering over her like a cat chasing a mouse. Perhaps that was his intent, to kiss her till he reached his fill, until he no longer craves the taste of her. Abruptly, he broke the kiss and dropped her back down to her feet. He took a step back, breathing heavily. She wanted with every fiber in her body to look down or run away, but instead she stood her ground and looked at him with obvious lust polluting those simmering golden irises. A look of confusion appeared on his face, his eyes sweeping over her face as she appeared out of nowhere, like he was trying to figure out who she was. Christ. He growled and shoved a hand through his hair. Ryker walked away from her with obvious anger. He regretted kissing her again because now he just didn't want a one kiss. He wanted another one. In fact, he wanted to strip her down to her without clothes body and explore slowly. Her responses to his kisses were confusing. The kiss they shared was not one where he would label unfeeling. In fact, he felt everything. He struggled to control his body reaction to her kisses, urging his breathing to regulate again. He found his brother talking to his pack members in the front. Obviously, they were also avoiding the crowds. They turned when they saw him, but no one mentioned why he was in such an ominous state. His mind momentarily wandered back to her, and Ryker was debating if coming here was a moral decision. Mary woke up the next morning questioning if last night happened or was it all a dream. Dabbing her lips, she remembered how she felt when he kissed her. It was urgent and sweet, dominating yet yearning. Her heart and stomach performed Olympic jumps just thinking about it. She can still feel how soft his lips were. He smelled just as good as the night of the mating ball. Hopeless, she buried her face in her hands, scrubbing it from its sleep and her incognito desires. It was hopeless because she liked his kisses, but she also knew without a doubt that it wouldn't work. He was an alpha. That reason alone was enough to stop her from dreaming about any future with him. Alpha of werewolf packs were strong and authoritative leaders. He'll smother her if he wished it so. Sighing, she tossed back her thin blanket and hopped out of bed. She needed to get ready for work. She showered and brushed her teeth before pulling on her work uniform. She wrapped her long hair into a tight bun above her head. The uniform was a traditional white sous chef coat with black piping. She paired it with black chef pants and shoes. At 20, Mary applied for a sous chef position in a local restaurant. She enjoyed working in a fast-paced environment and cooking. She took 2 years of culinary school. When she arrived at her workplace, it was already busy with many people. It didn't come as a surprise, though. The restaurant gets busy around lunch hour and remains steady until late at night. Although it was a high-end restaurant, many locals enjoyed dining there because of the friendly environment and food delicacy. Mary nodded to a few people with a smile on her face as she made her way through the dining area and into the back. The calm environment in the dining area differed from the kitchen. Everyone was working hard on completing their dishes. When Charlotte caught sight of Mary, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh my God, Mary, thank God you are here," she said, waving Mary over. Charlotte was bent down working on a menu, but it had a ton of scribbles and thoughts jumbled together. For a second, Mary didn't understand. Were they suddenly changing the menu to their restaurant? "What are you?" Mary inquired. "Alpha, I've uncalled today. The fool asked me to prepare out-of-the-world dinner for our guests." Charlotte nearly growled at the end in frustration. Mary placed a hand on her colleague's shoulder. Bending down, she reviewed Charlotte's menu. For the appetizer, she had chosen a sweet, tart and savory blend of pate, slow-cooked pork, and pickled dried apricots that smeared over toasted bread. It sounded wonderful, and Mary could already taste the different flavors that would erupt. When Mary looked over Charlotte's options for the main course, she frowned slightly. Her friend made a noise of exasperation. Apparently, she had caught sight of Mary's befuddled expression. "They would be here within a few hours. I have not yet prepped any of the ingredients." "Mary," she groaned, "why are you freaking out? You can do this. You're the chef, the general of this establishment. You didn't get this position because you look beautiful. Babe, you owned it. You beat everyone else to it. Mary reminded her friend and then returned her attention to the menu, pointing at a dish that Charlotte was working on. Since you already added bread as an appetizer, we should aim for something a little lighter in the main course. Fewer carbs and more protein. We can do a surf and turf kind of dish. How about throwing out a hearty stew and throwing in some rock shrimps, filet mignon, and vegetable medley, she offered. The worry on Charlotte's face slipped away. A smile appeared in its place and she pulled Mary into a hug, squeezing her tightly in her arms. If it was any other executive chef, they would probably toss Mary out on the streets for suggesting any ideas. Yet this was Charlotte. She always valued Mary's opinion. They worked on a light dessert to end the menu, and it was just in time. The guests have just arrived in the restaurant. The hostess who seated the guests in the dining area quickly informed them. Together, the two worked on the menu. Charlotte worked on creating the contrasting flavors between the sweet, tart apricot spread and the pate while the pork was being slow cooked. Oh God, I hope this works, Charlotte whispered to herself while plating her plates. Mary helped her plate the plates. There was 7 plates, which means there were 7 people out there. Okay. Charlotte waved for the plates to be picked up and delivered. Once the appetizers were delivered, she worked on creating the nice creamy ice cream dessert. While Mary helped create the surf and turf dish, she seasoned the steak well to get a good sear with a nice salty crust. She roasted the vegetables in the oven and seared the shrimps under garlic butter and seasoning them in the pan. She plated them quickly and then waved for them to be delivered once again. She felt anxious. Normally, she would work on the regular menu, but to assist Charlotte in creating dishes for important guests of Alpha Ivan, Mary couldn't help but feel like she needed to impress them. It didn't occur to her yet who was Alpha Ivan's guest. She was so immersed in helping her colleague out she didn't think about it twice. But when the waiter that delivered her dishes came into the kitchen again and requested that she stepped out into the dining area, she was momentarily taken aback. Did they not like it? She asked. Charlotte moved to stand next to her. "I'll go," Charlotte said. She didn't want Mary to feel like it was her fault. If they have any criticism at all about the menu of choice, it was Charlotte's job to own up to it. They specifically asked for the person who cooked the main course. The waiter insisted why. Charlotte seemed confused. She looked at Mary with the same confused expression. "I am the chef. If they have any complaints about the food we make here, they should bring it to my attention. It is my menu." Mary placed a hand on Charlotte's arm. "It's okay. They'll see what they are looking for. We still have the rest of the kitchen staff to direct. Continue working. I will be gone just for a minute and I'll be back. They'll let you know if anything goes wrong. If they give you a hard time, let me know, Charlotte insisted. Mary stepped outside with the waiter. They maneuvered around the countless round tables until they appeared in the private dining area. The waiter slid open the double doors and Mary looked inside. Her eyes swept the group of males until it stopped on Alpha Ryker. He looked surprised to see her too. It was just her luck. She had hoped to avoid him forever. But here he was again. It seemed he was going to make her lose her job now too. She'll give him an earful if this was the case. She feared him, but she also hated being bullied. She stepped inside the room and walked over to Alpha Ivan, bowing her head in greetings to him and the rest of the guests. Alpha Ivan smiled when he saw her. "Mary, I should have known it was you." Alpha Ivan chuckled. "Pardon." She looked confused. The dish was delicious, Beta Abraham announced from beside Alpha Ivan. Her eyes flew to him when he spoke. Being so close to him, she could see how handsome Abraham was. He looked a lot like his brother, but a little more on the playful side. Why was it that Ryker looked a little more ruggedly handsome? Someone cleared their throat, but it sounded more like an irritated growl. She blinked, breaking out of her thoughts and quickly realizing she had been ogling Beta Abraham. She was the first to look away. "Thank you," she murmured a reply to Beta Abraham. The steak was cooked perfectly. It paired well with the wine of choice too. Alpha Ivan redirected her attention back to him. She offered him a smile. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." "Alpha, She thanked everyone around the table as they offered their warm praises, her cheeks heating up at the amount of attention she was receiving from all the males. To have her culinary skills be praised was a huge boost in her ego. She loved cooking because cooking sends her on a tasteful journey. To turn simple ingredients into something more delicate and beautiful was always a challenge that she enjoyed. After they dismissed her, she returned to the kitchen. Mary told Charlotte everything that had happened. It relieved Charlotte to hear that it had nothing to do with the menu. However, she didn't know that Mary's mind was entirely elsewhere. Throughout the rest of the night, she thought about him. He didn't praise her like everyone else. Instead, he regarded her quietly. It was unnerving and made her body heat in all kinds of places. Finally, the night ended. She told her goodbyes to her co-workers and headed out of the restaurant. Busy night. She would leave the restaurant early around 9 in the evening. But tonight was rather busy. She didn't get to leave until 11. Her apartment was that far, though. It was only a few blocks from the restaurant. The street was quiet with street lamps lighting the way. Tonight, it was too breezy. The air was the kind of quiet which allowed her to listen to everything that was happening around her. She can still hear music playing from some late night bar that she passed by frequently to her home. She thought back to meeting Alpha Ryker tonight at the restaurant. Taking secretive glances at him, she found little things that she secretly liked about him. Those lips looked as soft as they felt. She liked the stubble beard that spread to just underneath his chin. Then the way he looked, sitting in that chair dressed in a nice white dress shirt that was unbuttoned at the top. It made him look almost as wild as he looked. She couldn't help but imagine him in nothing but nudity. Would he look rougher than he was now? She mused thoughtfully. Or an utterly sexy Viking. Those dark, penetrating eyes were hypnotizing. Every time their eyes would collide with each other, she found it hard to breathe. Her nether regions were screaming his name. Mary was so deep in thought. She really didn't focus on what was ahead of her. She tripped on her feet over something. Her eyes widened as she realized she was about to go down onto the sidewalk. A scream was building up in the back of her throat until she fell into a pair of open arms. The smell of cardamom and clove spices wrapped around her. A second later, she was pulled upright again. She knew who had saved her even before she looked at him. Alpha Ryker looked down at her with an incomprehensible expression. "Thank you," she found herself saying while gathering herself together. "You should look where you are going," he replied roughly. Speaking of looking, what exactly did she trip over? She turned to look and found a crack in the sidewalk. Her toe had connected with the raised cement. "I apologize. I am usually not this out of it," she muttered. "However, I thank you for saving me from greeting the hard cement with my face." She blinked too fast. She swore she saw his mouth twitch, but then it could be her imagination. Once again, they found themselves underneath the moon and a little farther away from the street lamp. No one would see them unless they were close to them. "Are you walking home?" He changed direction. She glanced down the block. Her apartment was just around the corner. Glancing back at him, she nodded her head. "I'm almost home," she replied. "I'll walk you home then," he offered and turned to walk. She frowned, but by turning and walking he gave her no choice to object. Mary followed him, walking side by side. She tried to be discreet in inhaling his wonderful scent. She loved these two spices. If only she could get closer to him. She'll greedily sniff him. "I wanted to talk to you about that night." He started. She wondered which night. The night at Alpha Ivan's house or the night at the mating ball. She couldn't decide what night, so she remained quiet. "That night was unexpected, and I hope that it doesn't happen again. You can't go around kissing people," he said. "I can kiss anyone I want," she retorted, feeling her own anger rising for some reason. She didn't like being scolded by him. "No, you can't. If it was anybody else, they would surely have taken advantage of you," he growled. "Like you." She threw back at him. He stopped in his footsteps. They were at the corner of the block now. Turning to look at her, he threw her a glare that scared the living crap out of her. But her own resentment was growing for her to care. It seemed trying to reason with you won't work. He drawled. She lifted her chin defiantly into the air. No, it won't. Who knows? I may kiss another stranger. His lips pinched into a thin line. He grabbed her arms and yanked her closer to him. Her face was only a few inches away from his. Is that what you are? Throwing away kisses and letting others touch your body? He implied in an angrily, almost deadly whisper. Mary struggled to break out of his embrace. The second she started fighting, he wrapped his arms around her body. She released an angry growl before glaring up at him. Have you kissed other males like how you kissed me? He questioned. She stopped struggling when she heard a hint of jealousy in his voice. He bit the last part out as if sickened by him. But in the mix of all the anger was something even more prominent. Something that has been with them since the night they met on the terrace. It lingered in the air and seemed to intensify the closer they are together. Fighting it was an instinct. She gulped and unconsciously wetted her lips. His eyes dropped to her lips once again before flying back to her. Mary, he said guttural lie. I have never kissed other males the way I kissed you, she admitted. That seemed to appease him. His arms that wrapped around her loosened enough for her feet to touch the ground again. I agree, though, she added quickly and saw the confused look on his face. I agree that we shouldn't kiss each other anymore. After all, you are Alpha Ryker and I am just a female werewolf. Let's forget that it ever happened. You can return to your pack after your visit and I can go on with my life. She offered him a smile of comfort that they both were on the same term. But she didn't expect his lips snatching hers a second later. She just told him no kissing. Yet he went and kissed her again. Maybe he was kissing her for the last time. It made sense to her. So she obliged him and kissed him back with as much ardor. If it was going to be their last kiss, she wanted to savor every moment. The kiss was like an erotic dance. Their lips melted against each other perfectly. The sweep of his tongue inside her mouth was like walking into familiar territory. He took control and smothered all the little sighs and moans she elicited from the kiss. It was enticing, and her knees buckled. She used his body weight to hold her up. He didn't mind holding her too. His arms held her tightly against his body. She ran her palms underneath his chin and to cup his cheeks. His stubble beard was tickling and sexy. A grey honked its horn as it turned the corner and catch them amid their make-out session. He broke from the kiss but held her up in his arms until she could stand on her own 2 feet again. Then he walked her back to her apartment until she was safely inside.